The sharp edge of morning light cut through the yellowed blinds, painting warm golden rays across the floor of Clara Granderson's modest home. Clara rose early, her body accustomed to decades of dawn rituals, even as her mind protested with the weight of another restless night. 65 years had etched fine lines around her eyes, carved deeper by grief than by time. The small kitchen welcomed her with familiar creaks in the floorboards as she moved with practiced efficiency, eggs sizzling in the skillet, while the aroma of toast and hot cocoa spread through the little space. Clara paused wooden spatula suspended in midair as she glanced at the old rocking chair in the corner. Alex's chair. Even 3 years after the accident, she sometimes caught herself expecting her son to walk through the door boots dusty from the construction site, that effortless smile lighting his face. The chair remained still, occupied only by memories. Through the window, the Atlanta outskirts stretched into the misty morning rooftops and bare tree branches silhouetted against the brightening sky. Last night's yellowish street lamp glow had been replaced by the honesty of daylight, but the sense of foreboding remained. Something about Danielle's visit had left Clara unsettled, a chill that had nothing to do with the Georgia winter. The doorbell's harsh intrusion startled her from these thoughts. Clara wiped her hands on a dishcloth, brushing back a strand of silver hair that had escaped her practical bun. Danielle stood on the porch, Clara's 5-year-old granddaughter Lily pressed against her mother's leg. Danielle's appearance caught Clara off guard. Once a woman whose smile rivaled the brightness of sunflowers, her daughter-in-law now seemed hollow-eyed, her skin sallow beneath hastily applied makeup. Her hands clutched the straps of her purse with whitened knuckles, eyes darting nervously down the alley as if searching for shadows in broad daylight. "You don't mind, do you?" Danielle's voice trembled, repeating the same question for the 3rd time, though Clara had already nodded and smiled in reassurance. Clara's attempts to meet her daughter-in-law's gaze revealed nothing of the sweet young woman Alex had brought home years ago. In her place stood someone Clara barely recognized, tense, distant, a stranger wearing familiar skin. "I have to work the night shift." Danielle's excuse hung between them, not the first time Clara had heard it, but there was something different today, like a cold draft finding its way through an unseen crack, making Clara shiver despite the morning warmth. Clara knelt to Lily's height, opening her arms. The child hesitated before stepping forward, her small body carrying attention that no 5-year-old should know. Lily's round eyes, so like Alex's, held a mixture of shyness and silent pleading. She clutched a faded, worn teddy bear, Barnaby, the faithful companion Alex had given her on her 2nd birthday. Clara noticed Lily's school clothes were wrinkled as if she'd slept in them. It had been months since Clara had been allowed an unguarded moment with her granddaughter, months since she'd heard Lily's uninhibited laughter. The realization stung more sharply than she expected. As Danielle turned to leave, she leaned toward Lily, whispering just loudly enough for Clara to catch the words, "Sleep well, my love. I'll come get you tomorrow." Then Danielle's eyes met Clara's in a fleeting moment of, what warning pleading? The look left Clara's chest heavy with an unnameable weight. Before Clara could form a question, Danielle's slender silhouette disappeared down the street, swallowed by shadows despite the morning sun. Inside, Clara led Lily to the kitchen table where a bowl of chicken noodle soup, prepared the previous afternoon in anticipation of this visit, waited. Clara placed it before Lily with a gentle smile. "Have some, sweetie. I made it just for you." Lily barely moved the spoon, her eyes fixed on the bowl as if seeing something beyond the steaming broth. "I'm not hungry, Grandma," she murmured, voice barely audible. Clara maintained her smile through sheer will, but inside she ached. This silent, withdrawn child was unrecognizable from the Lily who used to chatter excitedly about school, about friends, about the shapes she saw in clouds. Now she seemed a shell, a shadow of the vibrant girl Clara had known. Throughout the day, Lily curled on the sofa, clutching Barnaby, staring blankly at colorful cartoons playing on the small television. Clara knew she wasn't watching them. Her eyes remained empty, lost in thoughts no child should harbor. Several times Clara sat beside her, longing to ask what troubled her, but each time she encountered that vacant stare and found herself retreating, hoping that perhaps all Lily needed was time to feel safe again. Evening brought no improvement. Clara prepared the old daybed for Lily next to her own bed in the small room where she still kept the rocking chair that had been Alex's favorite spot for nighttime stories. Lily lay down quietly facing the wall, Barnaby clutched tight against her chest. In the silence, Clara heard the child's heavy sigh, a sound so adult-like, so weighted with weariness, that it reminded Clara of her own sleepless nights after Alex's passing, when only the painful beat of her heart kept her company in the darkness. Clara longed to hold Lily to whisper promises of protection and constancy, but feared startling the already skittish child. So she lay still instead, listening to Lily's breathing, praying for her sleep to be peaceful. Near midnight, Clara woke with a start to the sound of Lily's whimpers. The child sobbed in her sleep, voice shaky and broken. "Grandma, I'm so scared. Don't leave me." Clara quickly placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder, but the child remained asleep. Brow-furrowed lips pressed tight as if trying to contain some great fear. Clara stroked her tangled hair, whispering reassurances. "I'm here, my love. I'm not going anywhere." But inside Clara, a vague worry began to grow, seeping through her consciousness like a cold draft through her fingers. Something was deeply wrong with Lily, something beyond the normal grief of losing a father. Morning brought no respite. Clara rose before dawn, determined to create a comforting atmosphere to dispel the heaviness of the previous night. The smell of scrambled eggs and cocoa filled the kitchen as golden rays of sunlight stretched across the worn linoleum floor. She wanted Lily to wake up and feel the warmth that Alex had experienced every morning of his childhood in this house. But deep down, Clara knew nothing was as it had been before. Lily emerged from the bedroom with tangled hair and swollen red eyes, as if she'd been crying hard through the night. Still clutching Barnaby tightly, she seemed to use the stuffed bear as an anchor, the only thing keeping her upright. Clara tried to smile, her voice deliberately soft. "Sweetheart, did you sleep well last night?" Lily lowered her head, lips pressed together, not answering immediately. Clara continued preparing breakfast, flipping eggs in the pan, trying to maintain a light tone despite the growing knot in her stomach. "I made you scrambled eggs and hot cocoa. Will you sit and have breakfast with me?" The child hesitated, then sat at the table without releasing the teddy bear. Clara placed the plate before her, silently willing Lily to eat something, anything, if only to ease Clara's mounting concern. Then Lily murmured in a voice so low it was almost a breath, just enough to stop Clara's world from turning. "Grandma, Mom said I can't tell you what I saw at the house." Clara's hand froze in midair, the spatula threatening to slip from her grasp. She turned slowly, set the utensil down on the counter with deliberate care, and struggled to keep her voice from trembling. "Sweetheart, don't be afraid. What was it that you saw?" Clara knelt before Lily, looking into the child's clear eyes, now filling with tears. Lily pressed her lips together, caught between fear and the need to unburden herself. Then, with a trembling voice that tore at Clara's heart, "There's a little girl locked in the basement at home. Grandma, she won't stop crying. She says her hands hurt a lot." The metal spoon dropped from Clara's hand, clattering against the tile floor with a sound that seemed to echo forever. The glass of milk on the table wobbled, spilling a thin white stream across the surface. Clara felt paralyzed, unable to process what she'd just heard. Lily's terrified eyes looked at her, pleading for help, as if she'd just released a secret too enormous for her small shoulders to bear any longer. Clara wanted to ask more, to seek clarification, but her throat constricted as if in the grip of invisible hands. Before she could find her voice, Lily burst into tears and threw herself into Clara's arms, burying her face in her grandmother's shoulder. Her small body shook uncontrollably, like a tiny bird caught in a violent storm. Clara held her tightly, feeling each shuddering breath, but her mind raced with questions. A little girl locked in Danielle's basement. How could that be possible? She wanted to believe Lily had imagined it, that it was merely a nightmare manifesting in a child's confused mind. But the terror in Lily's eyes, the physical trembling of her body, these spoke of something real, something witnessed, not invented. Clara gently stroked Lily's tangled hair, trying to calm her while processing this impossible revelation. Her thoughts traveled back to happier days when the memory of their small family remained intact, bright as the Georgia sunshine after a summer rain. Years ago, this house wasn't so silent. It overflowed with laughter, conversations, and the familiar aromas of home cooking. Clara could perfectly recall those weekend afternoons when Alex, tall and strong in his work clothes, would walk through the door with a smile bright enough to chase away any shadow. "Mom, I had the whole team laughing at the construction site today." He'd begin kicking off dust-covered boots and lifting tiny Lily onto his shoulders. Lily, barely walking then, would laugh with abandon as her father tossed her gently toward the ceiling, her small hands reaching as if to touch the sky itself. Danielle had been different then, a sweet young woman whose smile rivaled the brightness of sunflowers. She and Clara spent hours in the kitchen preparing family recipes, Danielle asking with sparkling eyes, "Mom, do you think Alex will like this dish?" Clara would smile and tease. "If Alex doesn't enjoy what we prepare, I'll scold him myself." Those simple moments were precious jewels in Clara's memory treasures she'd believed would last forever. Family dinners had been the time she cherished most. Alex at the head of the table sharing funny anecdotes from work, from someone dropping a bucket of concrete to the entire crew singing during breaks. Little Lily seated on his lap listened with enormous eyes, occasionally interrupting with innocent questions. "Daddy, is that truck as big as our house?" Clara would sit watching her little family heart, filled with contentment. There were moments when she'd tell herself she was a fortunate woman with a complete family, even though life had never been simple. But everything shattered on that rainy night, marked by fate. Clara still remembered the early morning when the phone rang insistently, tearing through her sleep. The voice on the other end trembled, delivering the news Alex's car had lost control on a slick, dark road and plunged into a ravine. Clara had frozen, clutching the receiver, feeling the world crumble beneath her feet. "No, it can't be," she had murmured. But the cruel truth remained unchangeable. Alex, her sunshine, the light of her life, was gone forever, leaving a void impossible to fill. His funeral took place on a gray day, drizzle falling like tears from the sky. Clara held 2-year-old Lily tightly against her chest, the confused child still not understanding her father was gone forever. "Where is Daddy, Grandma?" Lily had asked, her voice so clear it nearly broke Clara completely. Clara had hugged her tighter, whispering, "Daddy is in a far-off place, but he's always watching you, my love." Danielle stood a few steps away, but she seemed to belong to another reality altogether, her eyes vacant, her face pale as a stone statue. Clara had wanted to approach her to take her daughter-in-law's hand, but something in Danielle's expression stopped her. A pain too vast, too deep for Clara to reach across. After Alex's death, their home became shrouded in somber fog. Danielle's smile disappeared. She grew quiet, withdrawn, spending hours locked in her room. Some days Clara heard sobbing behind the closed door, but whenever she knocked, Danielle would reply coldly, "I'm fine, Mom. Don't worry." Clara had wanted to believe Danielle would recover, that time would heal the wounds, but she'd been wrong. The pain hadn't just driven Danielle away from Clara. It had transformed her into someone unrecognizable. Not long after Danielle decided to move to an apartment in a different neighborhood. "I need a fresh start, Mom," she'd said in a monotone voice, avoiding Clara's eyes. Clara understood Danielle didn't just want to leave the house. She wanted to escape the memories of Alex that every corner and object evoked. Clara didn't blame her, but her heart broke when Lily had to go too. The child had been Clara's only remaining light, and suddenly she could only see her on the few weekends Danielle allowed her to visit. The house became vast and cold. Clara kept Alex's photo on the wall beside a family picture from an outing when Lily was just a baby, laughing heartily on her father's shoulders. Each night, Clara would sit before that photo, whispering to her son Alex, "What should I do? I miss you so much." Only the wind whistling down the hallway would answer, reminding her that solitude was all she had left. During subsequent visits, Clara noticed Lily changing. Her eyes, once bright and clear, now reflected a sadness difficult to name. She spoke less, smiled less, and whenever Clara tried to ask her anything, she would lower her head and hug Barnaby tighter, as if the teddy bear were her only shield. "I'm fine, Grandma," she would always say, but her eyes told a different story. When Clara questioned Danielle, she received only evasive replies. "Don't worry, Mom. I take good care of Lily." Clara had wanted to believe her, wanted to think Danielle was doing everything possible to be a good mother, despite her grief. But an increasing unease consumed her. She had no choice but to swallow her tears and watch helplessly as her granddaughter slowly drifted beyond reach. And now this terrible revelation. A child locked in a basement, Clara tried to make sense of it, to find an explanation that didn't involve her daughter-in-law in something unthinkable. Clara spent the next hour trying to calm Lily, gently stroking her hair, whispering reassurances. "It's okay, my love. Grandma will take care of everything." But Lily just shook her head, eyes tightly shut, as if trying to hide from the world itself. She pressed Barnaby against her chest, the worn teddy bear her only confidant in these lonely days. Clara wanted to ask more, to extract details, but seeing Lily's tiny shoulders trembling, she couldn't bring herself to press further. "Come on, sweetheart. Rest for a little while." Clara's voice remained gentle, though a hurricane of emotions raged inside her. That afternoon, she decided to take Lily to school, thinking the familiar environment of classrooms and friends might temporarily distract her from whatever fear was consuming her. They walked hand in hand along the gravel path, but every step felt heavy with unspoken dread. Lily remained silent the entire way, occasionally looking up as if wanting to say something but losing courage. Clara smiled, trying to mask the anxiety gnawing at her. "What are you going to learn today at school?" Lily merely shook her head without answering. Clara recognized a child carrying a burden too great for her years. At the school, Clara lingered to speak with Miss Jenkins, Lily's teacher. She found the middle-aged woman in the teacher's lounge, where the smell of chalk and paper still permeated despite digital advancements. "Miss Jenkins, can I speak with you for a moment?" Clara kept her voice low, fearful someone might overhear. Miss Jenkins looked at her with a slight frown of concern. "Of course, Mrs. Granderson. Has something happened with Lily?" Clara sat on an old wooden chair and related what Lily had told her that morning. Her voice trembled as she mentioned the girl locked in the basement. Miss Jenkins listened attentively, brow-furrowed, hands tightly clasped. When Clara finished, the teacher hesitated for a few seconds, as if carefully choosing her words. "Mrs. Granderson, I've noticed that Lily has changed recently. She gets startled easily. Sometimes she spaces out in class and can't focus." Miss Jenkins paused, looking at Clara with evident unease. "In art class, she's been drawing very strange pictures. It's almost always a solitary child in a dark room. Behind the figure are messy black lines like bars." Clara's heart contracted painfully. Those black lines like bars. The teacher's words struck directly, confirming her worst fears. "Do you think that's something—" Out of the ordinary, Clara's question emerged as barely a whisper. Miss Jenkins shook her head, her expression troubled. "I can't say for certain, ma'am, but I am worried about her emotional state. She might be going through something very difficult." Clara nodded, feeling the floor disintegrate beneath her feet. "Thank you, Miss Jenkins." Clara stood, though her legs trembled as if unable to support her weight. Walking home, she felt like a ghost drifting through familiar streets, now made strange by terrible possibilities. The images of Lily's drawings, the child in the dark room, the black lines like bars, refused to leave her mind. What had Lily seen? Was there truly a child locked up? Or was this the imagination of a deeply wounded little girl processing her own trauma? But Lily's frightened eyes, her trembling voice, these weren't fabrications. Clara couldn't dismiss the story so easily. She needed more clues, more evidence to understand what was happening. The alternative, doing nothing, was unthinkable if a child truly was in danger. That afternoon, Clara sat on her porch watching red crepe myrtles bloom in the yard. The wind blew strongly, carrying a chill that made her shudder as if delivering a warning. Mr. Sterling, her elderly neighbor, walked by, a kind widower with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing on their street. Noting Clara's distressed appearance, he stopped, resting his wooden cane on the step. "Mrs. Granderson, are you all right? You look like you've seen the devil himself." Clara attempted a weak smile, trying to conceal her concern. "I'm just a little tired, Mr. Sterling. How are you?" But the old man wasn't fooled. He sat on the wooden bench beside her and spoke gravely. "Mrs. Granderson, I know you're not one to worry over nothing. Is something going on with Lily?" Clara hesitated, uncertain whether to share her burden, but remembering Lily's frightened expression, she decided to reveal just enough to probe for information. "Lily told me something strange about a little girl at Danielle's house. I don't know what to think anymore." Mr. Sterling frowned, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. After a moment of silence, he lowered his voice as if afraid of being overheard. "Mrs. Granderson, there's something I haven't told anyone. One night last week I couldn't sleep, so I went out to the yard. I saw Danielle rushing into her house holding hands with a little girl. It certainly wasn't Lily. It was very late, past midnight." He paused, looking at Clara as if unsure whether to continue. "I also heard a muffled cry. At the time I thought it might be sick Lily crying, but now that I hear your story, it seems strange." Mr. Sterling's words struck Clara like lightning. Her heart pounded fiercely, hands gripping the edge of her coat until her knuckles whitened. "Are you sure, Mr. Sterling? Did you get a good look?" He nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "I couldn't make out her face, but it wasn't Lily. She was smaller, with shorter hair. I didn't want to say anything for fear of misjudging Danielle. But please be careful." Clara nodded, feeling loose pieces starting to form a terrifying puzzle in her mind. The strange behavior from Danielle Lilly's frightened confession, the drawings at school, and now Mr. Sterling's testimony. They pointed toward something unthinkable. That night, Danielle came to pick up Lily. Clara stood in the doorway, watching her enter, heart heavy with new suspicions. Danielle's gaze, sharp as a knife, scanned Clara's face as if assessing how much she knew. "Thanks for watching, Lily," she said coldly, without a hint of her former warmth. Lily hid behind her mother, hugging Barnaby tightly, looking at Clara with anxious eyes. Clara wanted to hold her back to ask more questions, but Danielle's glare stopped her. She took Lily's hand and quickly pulled her away without another word. Clara remained on the threshold, watching their silhouettes disappear down the alley, heart constricted with dread. She hadn't been able to protect Lily to keep her safe from whatever was happening in that house. The helplessness was overwhelming. At dawn, Clara woke with an unbearable weight pressing against her chest, as if the entire world stood against her. She had decided to step outside her comfort zone and face the truth, no matter how painful. She took the first bus toward the downtown precinct, sitting silently in the back, watching familiar streets pass by through the foggy window. They seemed distant today, as if belonging to another life altogether. The police station appeared before her, an old building with stained walls that had seen too many sorrows. Inside, the air hung heavy with the smell of damp paper and burned coffee, intensifying Clara's anxiety. She approached the front desk, hands trembling as she clutched her coat, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to speak with the officer in charge." She addressed the young patrolman, glancing through records. He looked at her with a spark of curiosity, then led her to a small room where Commander Davis sat behind a scratched wooden desk. Commander Davis was a middle-aged man with a hardened face and tired eyes, as if he had witnessed too many painful stories to maintain optimism. Clara sat down, took a deep breath, and began her account. She spoke of Lily's whisper about the girl locked in the basement, the strange drawings Miss Jenkins had described, and Mr. Sterling's account of an unknown child appearing late at night. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to speak clearly, as if each word were a brick in a wall of truth she was building. "Sir, I know this sounds crazy, but Lily isn't lying. My granddaughter is scared, and I believe something very bad is happening." Clara finished, looking intently into Commander Davis's eyes, hoping he could see the urgency in hers. Commander Davis listened, hand-tapping a steady rhythm on the desk, but when she finished, he slowly shook his head. "Mrs. Granderson, I understand your concern," he said in a flat, emotionless voice. "But all we have are the words of a child, a few drawings, and a neighbor's testimony. That's not enough probable cause to request a search warrant for your daughter-in-law's home." His words fell like a bucket of ice water. Clara felt blood freezing in her veins. She clenched her hands tightly to control their trembling. "But what if there really is a child in danger, sir? If Lily is telling the truth, and we do nothing, what will happen to that girl?" Commander Davis sighed, a faint flicker of compassion appearing in his eyes. "We will file your report," he replied with the same coldness. "But for now you have to wait. We need more concrete evidence." Clara wanted to scream, to explain that time waits for no one, that every minute could mean more suffering for the child Lily had mentioned. But she simply nodded, stood up on legs that barely supported her. "Thank you, sir," she muttered, though inside she wanted only to cry out against this bureaucratic indifference. Leaving the precinct, Clara felt abandoned by the very systems meant to protect the vulnerable. The midday sun beat down, but she felt only cold emptiness. She walked to the bus stop, mind blank except for the repeated question, "What do I do now?" She had hoped the police would act immediately, that they would believe Lily's account. But now all she had was solitude, and the fear of not being able to protect either her granddaughter or that nameless child possibly suffering nearby. That afternoon, Clara went to the market, trying to occupy herself with mundane tasks while she considered her next move. But as she walked between familiar stalls, she heard the whispers. "Poor old Mrs. Granderson. She's losing her mind. She must have head troubles," a fish vendor murmured to her colleague, loud enough for Clara to hear. Who accuses their own daughter-in-law of kidnapping children? Clara stopped, feeling a dagger pierce her heart. She turned toward the woman, who immediately lowered her head, pretending to busy herself with the fish on her table. Clara understood immediately. Danielle had moved faster than anticipated. She had already spread rumors throughout the neighborhood, claiming Clara was delusional from missing Lily so much that she'd invented a story to regain custody of her granddaughter. Clara returned home with a heart heavy as stone. She sat on the porch watching crepe myrtle blossoms fall, trying to find some calm amid the storm of her thoughts. But tragedy reached its peak that very night. As the sun set, a car stopped before her gate. Danielle emerged with Lily, but this time she didn't enter the house as usual. She stood in the yard, holding Lily tightly, crying hysterically in front of her brother Ethan. "She's slandering me, Ethan," Danielle shouted, her voice breaking. "She says I kidnap children, that I want to ruin my life. I only want to take care of Lily, and she does this to me." Ethan, a tall, rough-looking man, stepped toward Clara, pointing an accusatory finger. "Ma'am, please leave my family alone. Who do you think you are to dare defame my sister like this?" Clara stood motionless, heart gripped as if in a vice. Neighbors began gathering in the street, and all those looks of curiosity, pity, and distrust fixed upon her, like spotlights on a stage she never wanted to occupy. Poor Mrs. Granderson must miss her granddaughter too much. That's why she invents things, someone murmured. "Poor thing, she's getting old," another agreed. Clara wanted to scream to explain she wasn't crazy, that Lily had seen something terrible, but words stuck in her throat. She stood frozen, feeling the entire world turning against her in a conspiracy of disbelief. From the car, Lily turned to look at Clara through the window. Her eyes filled with sadness and despair, seemingly saying, "Grandma, save me." Clara wanted to run to her, embrace her, not let her go, but her legs refused to move. Danielle started the engine and drove away, leaving Clara alone under the neighborhood's collective gaze. She heard the murmurs behind her back from people who were once friendly neighbors, but now regarded her as a deranged old woman. She might be isolated, but deep down, Clara knew she couldn't surrender to their judgment. Not when a child's welfare, perhaps even life, hung in the balance. Stumbling, Clara entered the house after that bitter confrontation. Her steps were heavy, weighed down by accusing looks and whispered suspicions. She thought she had grown accustomed to loss, but now she felt like a dry leaf swept away by merciless wind without strength to resist the storm. She collapsed into the old armchair in the living room, gaze fixed on Alex's portrait. Her son's smile remained warm as ever, but it only intensified her pain. "Alex, what should I do?" she whispered, voice breaking in the stillness. No one answered. Only the whistling wind on the porch and the distant sound of a television news report she couldn't focus on. All she heard was her heart screaming in silence. The image of Lily looking out through the car window with infinite sadness pierced Clara's soul like a knife. Danielle had successfully painted her as the neighborhood lunatic. Her rumors that Clara hallucinated from excessive longing for her granddaughter dug like needles into Clara's pride. She had pinned all her hopes on the visit to the precinct, only to receive Commander Davis's cold refusal. No sufficient evidence, he'd told her. How could she wait when Lily was terrified, when perhaps another unknown girl was in danger? Clara couldn't sleep that night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock ticking away every second of her helplessness. Whenever she closed her eyes, she saw Lily's look, or heard her dreadful whisper again. "There's a little girl locked in the basement." She turned, hugging the pillow where Lily had slept the night before, as if it still held her scent, as if it could provide strength to continue. But all she felt was a cold emptiness in her chest. Clara questioned herself. Am I doing the right thing? Or am I truly just a delusional old woman, as they say? Morning brought no answers. Clara tried visiting the market as usual, hoping the familiar routine would clear her thoughts. But upon entering, she felt an obvious change. The regular vendors who once greeted her warmly now fell silent at her approach. They leaned toward each other, murmuring their looks a mixture of pity and distance. Poor Mrs. Granderson. She misses her granddaughter so much she's lost her mind. She overheard a vegetable seller whisper. Clara lowered her head, quickened her pace, pretending not to hear, but each word struck like a hammer blow. She wanted to scream that she wasn't crazy, that Lily had seen something terrible, but she knew such outbursts would only reinforce Danielle's narrative. Returning home, she encountered Brenda, her closest friend in the neighborhood. Brenda stood at the gate with a wicker basket, her face filled with concern. Unlike others, she didn't avoid Clara, but came closer, leading her to a corner by the fence, squeezing her hands tightly. "Clara, I know you," she said in a low but firm voice. "I don't believe you would invent this. I saw Lily's eyes last night when Danielle took her away. The child was scared. Clara, if you give up now, that regret will stay with you for the rest of your life." Brenda's words electrified Clara, igniting a tiny spark of hope amid despair. She took her friend's hand, tears threatening to fall. "Brenda, thank you," she whispered. "But I don't know what to do anymore. No one believes me. Brenda squeezed harder determination in her eyes that Clara hadn't seen in herself lately. "You have to keep going, Clara, for Lily and for yourself. Don't let the gossip make you retreat." Clara nodded, though her heart remained heavy. Brenda was right. She couldn't surrender. But what could one elderly woman do when the entire world seemed aligned against her? That afternoon, Clara trimmed the crepe myrtles in her yard, seeking solace in routine. The red petals fell like small drops of blood, intensifying her unease. Suddenly, hurried footsteps approached. Mr. Sterling appeared at her fence, a package of coffee in his hand, and an expression of urgency on his weathered face. "Mrs. Granderson, you have to see this," he said, lowering his voice, as if afraid of being overheard. Clara abandoned her gardening heart, sinking with anticipation. "What's wrong, Mr. Sterling?" He led her inside, firmly closed the door, and withdrew an old cell phone from his pocket. "I asked my nephew at the corner store to check the security cameras from last week," he explained, voice trembling with excitement. "Look, Clara, you need to see this." The screen illuminated, showing blurry, grainy images. Clara held her breath as she watched the video unfold. There was Danielle, her daughter-in-law, once part of her family, leading an unknown little girl by the hand, rushing her into the house late at night. The child wore worn pajamas, her hair tangled, her figure smaller than Lily's, walking awkwardly as if afraid. Clara, a woman of 65 years who thought she had witnessed life's worst cruelties, felt the floor open beneath her. Lily's whisper about a girl locked in the basement was no longer a confused child's story. It was truth, and this video provided the evidence she had prayed for. She looked at Mr. Sterling, voice catching in her throat. "Mr. Sterling, are you sure there isn't some mistake?" she asked, though deep down she already knew the answer. He nodded firmly, his gaze more serious than ever. "There can be no mistake, Mrs. Granderson. I saw that scene with my own eyes. I just didn't imagine the camera recorded it too. I was in the yard that night, and I know it wasn't Lily." His words stabbed painfully, but they also provided strength Clara desperately needed. She clutched the phone tightly as if it were the only lifeline in the storm threatening to drown her. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," she whispered, close to tears. "You don't know how important this is." Without hesitation, Clara decided to take the video to the precinct immediately. She couldn't wait another minute while a child remained in danger. She quickly donned an old coat, covered her head with a scarf, and left Mr. Sterling's house with burning determination. The path to the precinct seemed longer today, each step weighted with responsibility. She thought of Lily, her frightened eyes, and Alex, her son who would surely want her to protect his daughter and any child in danger, no matter the cost. Entering the precinct, Clara inhaled the familiar smell of old paper and burned coffee, but this time she felt no fear. She had proof, and she wouldn't leave until action was taken. She immediately requested to see Commander Davis. The young patrolman at reception, perhaps noting the urgency in her eyes, quickly escorted her to the familiar room where Commander Davis sat behind his desk, face stern and eyes tired. "Mrs. Granderson." "Back again?" he said with surprise. "Is there anything new?" Clara took a deep breath, placed Mr. Sterling's cell phone on the desk, and spoke with newfound resolve. "Sir, I have evidence. Please look at this video." Clara played the video for Commander Davis, watching his face as he absorbed its implications. The grainy security footage showed Danielle clearly leading a small girl, definitely not Lily, into her house under cover of darkness. The child's body language communicated fear, even through the poor resolution. Commander Davis frowned, his expression shifting almost imperceptibly from skepticism towards something more alert. "I recounted what Mr. Sterling saw, what Lily told me about the girl in the basement, and also the strange drawings at school," Clara explained, her voice steadier than she felt. "That's not Lily in the video, and I don't know who this girl is, but I believe she's in danger." Commander Davis studied the footage again, barely furrowing his brow, yet his gaze remained doubtful. "It could be that she was just watching a friend's daughter," he offered in a monotone voice that suggested routine dismissal rather than genuine consideration. His words pierced Clara like another dagger. She couldn't allow him to dismiss this evidence so easily, not when children's safety hung in the balance. She leaned forward, her voice nearly breaking with urgency. "I implore you, investigate further. That girl isn't from our neighborhood. I've lived there for many years. I know everyone, and Lily, my granddaughter, is scared. She talks about a girl locked in a basement crying, saying her hand hurts. Please believe me." Perhaps the desperation in Clara's voice, or the unmistakable fear in her eyes, made Commander Davis hesitate. He signaled to a nearby young officer. Check if there's any missing person report that matches this girl's characteristics, he ordered with newfound seriousness. The officer nodded, checked the files, and began typing rapidly on his computer. Clara remained seated, heart pounding against her ribs, hands gripping her coat's edge as if holding on to her last thread of hope. Minutes that felt like hours passed before the young officer suddenly called out, "Commander, look at this. The girl in the video has characteristics matching. Chloe Vance, age 5, reported missing 2 weeks ago in the neighboring county." He turned the computer screen toward Commander Davis, and Clara watched the man's face transform instantly. His tired eyes now sharpened with intensity she hadn't seen before. He stood abruptly and issued firm commands. "Verify the information immediately. Contact the neighboring precinct. Request the complete disappearance file." Clara's heart hammered within her chest as if about to burst through her ribs. This was it, the proof she needed. The name of the girl Chloe struck like lightning through the darkness of her soul. She looked at Commander Davis, tears threatening to spill, but she contained them. "Thank you for listening," she whispered, voice constricted with emotion. Commander Davis didn't respond verbally, only nodded. But his eyes had changed, no longer filled with doubt, but with cold determination. At that moment, the precinct door burst open and several concerned neighbors entered. Clara recognized them: Mrs. Hayes, who sold pies on the corner, and Mr. O'Donnell, who often played chess with Mr. Sterling. Mrs. Hayes spoke first, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "Commander, we heard Mrs. Granderson came in about Danielle. We also have something to say." She hesitated briefly, glancing at Clara as if seeking permission. Clara nodded, encouraging her to continue. "We've heard crying strange noises at Danielle's house, even on nights when Lily was staying with Mrs. Granderson. At first, we thought it was just kids having tantrums, but now we're not so sure." Mr. O'Donnell nodded and added, "I once saw a light flickering in her basement right before dawn. I didn't think much of it then, but now it seems strange." Their statements completed the terrible puzzle forming in Clara's mind. She looked at Commander Davis, hoping he recognized the gravity of the situation. He nodded, doubt completely absent from his expression. "There is sufficient evidence, ma'am," he announced firmly. "We will request a search warrant immediately." Clara nodded as tears finally escaped, streaming down her weathered cheeks. For the first time after so many dark days, she glimpsed a ray of hope breaking through clouds of despair. But with that hope came terrible fear of what they might discover. She returned home after leaving the precinct, mind knotted with contradictory emotions. Relief that authorities were finally acting, but terror about what would come next. She thought she had already weathered life's worst storms, yet now faced a hurricane whose destructive power she couldn't fathom. Mr. Sterling's video confirmation about Chloe and neighbors' accounts had ignited hope, but they also made Clara shudder, contemplating what lay ahead. Danielle Wundt's family now stood on truth's opposite side, and Clara couldn't predict what awaited when secrecy's veil lifted. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Rain drummed against the metal roof like a war cadence echoing through her small house. She sat in the living room beneath yellowish lamplight, casting shadows across Alex's photo. His smile remained gentle, but his eyes seemed to speak, "Mom, you have to be strong." She clasped her hands and whispered a prayer, asking Alex's spirit to protect Lily and little Chloe, that innocent child she'd never met, but who now drove her to continue fighting. "Alex, help me protect them," she murmured, voice breaking in the empty room. Every thought of Lily's frightened expression and Chloe's stumbling walk in the security video stabbed at Clara's heart, but strengthened her resolve. She couldn't allow these children to suffer another minute. Yet fear accompanied her determination. When truth emerged, it would shatter what little remained of her family. Danielle, though changed, remained Lily's mother, and once called Clara Mom. How could Clara face her? How would she bear the truth that her daughter-in-law might be involved in something so horrific? The next morning, Clara went to the market, despite everything clinging to routine as an anchor in the storm. But the atmosphere had transformed. Curious stares and whispers followed her like persistent shadows. "There goes Mrs. Granderson again, accusing her daughter-in-law," a fruit vendor murmured, believing Clara couldn't hear. "She must miss her granddaughter so much she's gone crazy." Clara lowered her head and hastened her steps, avoiding those pitying or suspicious looks. She purchased a few necessities and quickly returned home, heart heavy with unspoken burdens. The gossip no longer mattered. Her focus remained on Lily and Chloe. Around noon, Brenda arrived carrying a hot casserole. She entered Clara's house, placed the dish on the table, and sat beside her friend, squeezing her hand firmly. "Clara, be brave. she encouraged, her voice warm but resolute. "I know how much you're suffering, but the truth will emerge. Don't let the chatter make you back down." Clara looked into Brenda's eyes and found deep empathy there. One of the few people who hadn't abandoned her, who didn't view her as a deranged old woman fabricating stories. "Brenda, I'm terrified," Clara confessed, voice trembling. "If the truth proves too terrible, I don't know how I'll face it. What will become of Lily and her mother?" Brenda squeezed Clara's hand tighter, interrupting her spiral of doubt. "Clara, you are the strongest woman I know. You lost Alex, yet remained standing for Lily. Don't doubt yourself now. You're doing what's right." Her words kindled a small flame, warming Clara's cold heart. She nodded, tears trickling down her cheeks. "Thank you, Brenda. I'll try my best." Brenda smiled, patted Clara's shoulder, and departed, leaving the delicious-smelling casserole that Clara lacked appetite to try. Later that afternoon, Mr. Sterling approached, concern etched across his face. He sat on the bench by Clara's entrance, leaning on his cane, and spoke quietly as if fearing eavesdroppers. "Mrs. Granderson, I heard strange noises at Danielle's house again last night. It sounded like someone knocking on a door, followed by muffled sobbing. I didn't dare get closer, but I'm certain something is wrong there." His words tightened the knot in Clara's chest. She thought of Chloe, of what Lily had described, feeling an invisible hand constricting her throat. "Mr. Sterling, do you think that girl is still there?" she asked, voice cracking with emotion. He nodded, his expression profoundly troubled. "I don't know, Clara, but I hope the police resolve everything soon." She took his hand, thanking him again for not turning his back on her when so many others had. Mr. Sterling's news intensified her unease, but reinforced her conviction that Lily spoke truth. She couldn't allow Chloe to continue suffering. She had to act, even if only a faint hope remained. That night, Clara called Miss Jenkins, Lily's teacher. She explained the situation, voice quavering with emotion. "Miss Jenkins, if anything happens to Lily, please watch over her for me. I don't know what tomorrow might bring, but I need to know she'll be safe." Miss Jenkins immediately agreed without hesitation. "Mrs. Granderson, don't worry. I'll keep an eye on Lily. You do what you must." Her reassurance slightly eased Clara's burden, though anxiety still weighed heavily. Before trying to sleep, Clara carefully gathered her important documents, family albums and Lily's strange drawings, into a small bag. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but needed to prepare for any possibility. She sat before Alex's photo, whispering, "Son, I'm doing everything possible. I won't let Lily suffer anymore." She closed her eyes, seeking peace, but her heart remained turbulent with apprehension. Suddenly, in the night's deepest silence, the telephone's sharp ring shattered the quiet, startling Clara from her troubled thoughts. She answered immediately, heart racing. Commander Davis's voice came through, brief but firm. "Mrs. Granderson, we are executing the search warrant at Danielle Granderson's house at dawn tomorrow. Be ready." Clara collapsed into her chair, the receiver trembling in her hand. "Thank you, sir. I'll be prepared." She hung up and gazed out the window, where rain beat relentlessly against the glass. Its rhythm reminded her that the true storm approached with morning light. Clara woke before dawn the next day. Faint light barely filtered through window blinds as she dressed with trembling hands, putting on a thick coat and wrapping herself in a scarf. She looked at Alex's photo on the wall and whispered a final plea for strength. The images of frightened Lily and the unknown Chloe circled in her mind, driving her forward despite paralyzing fear. The sharp sound of patrol cars stopping before her house startled Clara from her thoughts. Commander Davis emerged from a vehicle, his stern face betraying no emotion. "Let's go, Mrs. Granderson," he stated firmly. Clara nodded, clutching her bag of documents and drawings tightly like a talisman. She entered the car, remaining silent in the back seat, watching the foggy world through the window. The drive to Danielle's house seemed quicker than ever, yet each second weighed like eternity. Would she have strength to face whatever truth awaited? They arrived when the sky remained gray, with dark clouds hovering above, forecasting a coming storm. Cold wind gusted, making red crepe myrtle petals fall onto the yard like blood droplets. Clara stood before the gate, heart pounding rapidly, entire body shaking with anticipation and dread. Commander Davis knocked on the door, sharp sounds echoing in the morning silence. The door burst open, revealing Danielle. Her face paled with surprise, but only momentarily before transforming into fury. "What are you doing here?" she shouted, her voice icy, attempting to mask obvious fear. Commander Davis calmly displayed the search warrant before her. "We have a legal warrant." I ask for your cooperation, he stated firmly, brooking no argument. Danielle examined the document, then glared at Clara with eyes that cut like knives straight to her heart. You did this, didn't you? She spat, pointing accusingly. You want to destroy me? Take Lily from me. Clara remained silent, hands clutching her coat's edge, offering no response. She wanted to explain she only wished to protect Lily to save little Chloe, but words remained trapped in her throat. She could only look at this stranger who once was her daughter-in-law with a mixture of pity and determination. Suddenly, Ethan Danielle's brother rushed from the house, neck veins bulging as he shouted, "This is a private home. You have no right. You're slandering and humiliating my family." His voice roared like a cornered animal protecting its territory. Commander Davis ignored him completely, signaling his team of officers to enter. Clara stood motionless in the yard, catching a glimpse through the door's gap of Lily huddled in the living room corner, tightly hugging Barnaby. Her small eyes appeared red and swollen, suggesting she'd cried extensively. Clara longed to run to her to assure her that Grandma had come, that everything would be all right. But Danielle's cold stare immobilized her, keeping her rooted outside while police methodically searched each room. The sound of boots striking tile floors mingled with shuffling papers. Tension saturated the air until the entire house seemed to hold its breath, awaiting revelation of long-buried secrets. Danielle followed the officers, crying and screaming accusations. It's all my mother-in-law's fault. She wants to destroy my life. How can you believe a crazy old woman? Her words pierced Clara's heart like daggers. She wanted to shout that she wasn't crazy, that she only wished to protect innocent children, but remained silent, feeling the world aligned against her. Commander Davis ignored Danielle's histrionics, leading his team directly toward the hallway's end, where a small old iron door led to the basement. Clara immediately sensed the atmosphere shift. Danielle's expression transformed into sheer panic. She ran forward, spreading her arms to block the entrance, voice breaking with desperation. There's nothing down there. It's just an old storage room. No one goes in there. The frantic edge in her tone knotted Clara's chest. She knew Lily had told the truth. Something terrible hid behind that door. One officer stepped forward calmly, inserting a master key into the rusty lock. Ethan roared, lunging to stop him, but two officers immediately restrained him. You can't open it, he yelled, struggling against their grip. Clara held her breath, hands clenched painfully tight. Neighbors gathered in the street, murmuring and staring intently at the unfolding scene. She heard someone whisper, My God, could what Mrs. Granderson said be true? Clara no longer cared about others' opinions. Her entire focus centered on that iron door, the barrier between darkness and light, between secrets and truth. The lock opened with a dry click that seemed to echo through the tense silence. The officer pulled his door firmly, producing a chilling creak that resonated like a long-buried secret scream. From the darkness within came a weak, trembling child's cry, a contained plea for help that froze Clara's blood. The basement door swung fully open, releasing a gust of damp, stale air, as if darkness itself exhaled long-held secrets. Clara stood in Danielle's yard, feeling her heart stop momentarily. The soft sobbing from inside sounded weak but unmistakable, like a supplication from beyond mortal boundaries. An officer activated his flashlight, sweeping the beam across stained walls, destroyed cardboard boxes, and then illuminating a shadowy corner where a small silhouette stumbled forward. It was Chloe, the girl from the security video the child Lily had described, with fear trembling her voice. Her hair appeared matted, face covered in dust-torn pajamas clinging to her thin frame. Her left arm had been wrapped in a dirty rag, and her wide eyes darted around in panic at the strangers surrounding her. Clara stood stunned, legs weakening beneath her. She grabbed a porch column to prevent collapse. The image of Chloe, so small and fragile, wounded Clara's heart like a physical blow. She thought of what Lily had witnessed, and tears streamed freely down her face. Chloe, she whispered, voice breaking, as if naming the child might somehow alleviate her suffering. A female officer rushed forward, lifting Chloe protectively in her arms, pressing the girl against her chest. Call EMS now, she shouted urgently. Chloe clutched an old, faded cushion, hands trembling as if this single object represented the only remnant of her safe world before captivity. The neighbors crowded Danielle's yard, all visibly shocked by the unfolding scene. Murmurs rose like waves. My God, it's true. Mrs. Granderson was telling the truth, after all, someone remarked with evident regret. The same people who had turned their backs on Clara, who had labeled her a crazy old woman, now stood with bowed heads, unable to meet her gaze. Yet Clara felt no triumph, only heartache. For Chloe, for Lily, and for herself, seeing her family shattered once more. Danielle screamed maniacally, lunging toward the officer carrying Chloe. "No, I didn't lock her up. I just wanted to protect her." She shrieked through streaming tears, her voice devoid of conviction, merely the desperate wail of someone whose secrets had been exposed. Ethan continued struggling against the officers restraining him. "This is a setup. They're framing my sister. It's all that old woman's plan," he shouted, eyes blazing with fury. Clara remained motionless, offering no response, only observing them. People she once considered family who now seemed like strangers standing on truth's opposite shore. Commander Davis interrupted the chaos, his voice cutting through the commotion. "Quiet. The crime is evident," he announced with authority, signaling his team to continue searching the basement thoroughly. They rummaged through old boxes and examined every corner. An officer lifted a bundle of documents, his voice trembling slightly with discovery. "Commander, you need to see this." Clara held her breath, watching Commander Davis open the package. They were notebooks filled with strange symbols and scattered phrases about a dark cult. In one, the name Elias Thorne appeared beside a signature. Commander Davis frowned, his voice turning grave with recognition. Elias Thorne. That name sounds familiar. He was the leader of an extremist group that the press exposed last year. Commander Davis's words struck like lightning, stunning both Clara and the crowd surrounding them. She thought about Danielle, about the changes after Alex's death, her strange, distant gaze, the terrifying silence maintained whenever Clara inquired about Lily. How could her sweet daughter-in-law have become entangled with someone like Elias Thorne? How could someone who once baked cookies and laughed at family dinners fall down such a dark path? Clara wanted to approach her to understand why, but her legs refused to move. Chloe was carefully placed in an ambulance. The little girl appeared, weak eyes still filled with panic, but her voice rose in a plaintive cry. "Mommy, I want to go back to Mommy." Those words shattered Clara's heart anew. She thought of Chloe's mother surely suffering somewhere waiting for her daughter, and prayed they would soon reunite. Clara glanced toward Lily, huddled in a corner, red-eyed, watching the ambulance depart. She longed to run to her granddaughter, but Commander Davis gestured for her to remain in place, sensing this drama hadn't yet concluded. Danielle was handcuffed. 2 officers led her from the house toward a patrol car. As she passed Clara, she paused, eyes gleaming with hatred. "You destroyed everything," she hissed through clenched teeth, voice vibrating with rage and pain. Clara met her gaze, searching for any trace of the daughter-in-law she once loved. But she found only unfamiliar coldness, a stranger wearing Danielle's face. The officers continued documenting evidence and processing the scene for hours. Clara sat on a nearby bench, emotionally drained, yet unable to leave. Commander Davis approached. Eventually, his face softened slightly from its earlier stoniness. "Mrs. Granderson will need your formal statement at the station. We're contacting Chloe Vance's parents. They've been searching for their daughter for 2 weeks. He hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "The notebooks we found contain disturbing material about this New Light Society, led by Thorne. It seems they target vulnerable women who have experienced significant loss. We've been tracking Thorne's group for months, but this is our first solid connection." Clara nodded mutely, trying to process this information. She thought about Danielle after Alex's death, lonely, isolated in her grief, perhaps the perfect target for a manipulative cult leader. What about Lily? She asked, her primary concern unchanged, despite the day's revelations. Commander Davis assured her, "Your granddaughter will need to be interviewed by our child specialist, but she can stay with you tonight. We'll sort out custody arrangements later. For now, she needs stability and familiar surroundings." Relief washed through Clara at these words. At least tonight, Lily would be safe with her. The next several hours passed in a blur of statements, paperwork, and procedures. Clara recounted everything multiple times. Lily's revelation, Mr. Sterling's observations, the strange drawings, Danielle's behavioral changes. She felt emptied by the time they allowed her to take Lily home. The drive back to Clara's house occurred in silence. Lily sat in the back seat, clutching Barnaby, staring out the window with vacant eyes that had witnessed too much. Clara occasionally glanced back, wanting to say something comforting, but finding no words adequate for the situation. When they arrived, Clara helped Lily inside, prepared hot chocolate, a comfort ritual from happier times, and sat with her at the kitchen table. For a long while, neither spoke. Then Lily looked up, eyes filled with tears. Grandma, was I bad to tell Mom said it was our secret? Clara's heart constricted painfully at the question. She reached across the table, taking Lily's small hand in hers. No, sweetheart. You were very, very brave. You helped save another little girl. You did exactly right. Lily considered this, looking down at her untouched cocoa. Will Mom come back? The innocent question carried impossible weight. Clara swallowed hard, unsure how to explain that their family had permanently changed, that some things could never return to what they were. Your mom needs help right now, Lily. She made some bad choices. For a while you'll stay with me, and we'll take care of each other. Lily nodded slowly, seeming to accept this simplified explanation. She took a small sip of cocoa, the first normal action Clara had seen from her in days. That night, Clara prepared a bath for Lily, helped her into clean pajamas, and tucked her into the daybed. She read a story, one of Alex's childhood favorites, and stayed beside Lily until the child fell asleep. Exhaustion finally overcoming anxiety, Clara remained awake far longer, sitting in Alex's rocking chair, watching Lily's chest rise and fall with each breath. The enormity of the day's events overwhelmed her. Her daughter-in-law arrested, a kidnapped child rescued, a cult connection revealed, and somehow Clara stood at the center of this storm, a 65-year-old widow who had simply trusted her granddaughter's words when no one else would. Morning brought reporters to Clara's door. News traveled quickly in small towns, especially sensational news involving kidnapping and cults. Clara refused to speak with them, protecting Lily from further trauma. Commander Davis called, informing her that Chloe had been reunited with her parents, the Vances, who wished to meet Clara when appropriate. The call Clara dreaded most came from Georgia's Department of Family and Children's Services. A caseworker would visit to assess Lily's living situation and needs. With Danielle in custody facing serious charges, Clara needed to file for emergency custody, a process she knew nothing about. Thankfully, Brenda arrived with information about family attorneys and offers to help navigate the system. Mr. Sterling brought groceries, and surprisingly other neighbors began stopping by with casseroles, flowers, and awkward apologies. Mrs. Hayes, the pie vendor who had whispered about Clara's sanity, stood on her porch with downcast eyes. Mrs. Granderson, we should have believed you. We're so sorry. Clara accepted their apologies graciously, though part of her wondered where their support had been when she stood alone against her daughter-in-law's accusations. Still, she recognized the value of community, especially now when Lily would need stability and normalcy. 3 days after the rescue, the Vance family requested a meeting. Clara agreed, preparing tea and cookies, though her stomach knotted with anxiety. What could she possibly say to people whose child had suffered so terribly under her own daughter-in-law's roof? The Vances arrived precisely at the agreed time. Robert, a tall man with kind eyes shadowed by recent trauma, and Marilyn, a petite woman whose resemblance to Chloe was unmistakable. Between them stood Chloe herself, looking remarkably improved, though still thin and wearing a proper cast on her arm. Clara welcomed them nervously, offering refreshments, which they politely accepted. For several minutes, awkward small talk filled the space between them. Comments about the weather, the house, the flowers blooming despite autumn's approach. Finally, Robert Vance cleared his throat, tears gathering in his eyes. Mrs. Granderson, we don't have words to express our gratitude. Without you and Lily, we might never have found our daughter. Marilyn nodded, reaching across to grasp Clara's hand. When Chloe disappeared from our backyard, police suspected a stranger abduction. We never imagined... She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. The horror of what had happened remained too raw for direct discussion. Clara squeezed Marilyn's hand gently. I did what anyone would do. The real hero is Lily. My granddaughter saw something wrong and spoke up despite being frightened. The adults glanced toward the living room where Lily and Chloe sat together on the carpet. Though they hadn't known each other before this ordeal, they shared a bond now. Both victims of circumstances beyond their control, both survivors. Marilyn hesitated, then asked the question Clara had been dreading. Do you know why? Why would your daughter-in-law take our child? Clara sighed heavily, attempting to formulate an answer that made any sense. After my son died, Danielle changed. She became distant, secretive. I now believe she fell under the influence of this cult leader, Thorne. The police think the group targets children they believe have special gifts. From the notebooks they found, it seems they conduct some kind of purification rituals. She couldn't bring herself to elaborate further. The snippets Commander Davis had shared about the cult's beliefs and practices turned her stomach. That Danielle could participate in such things seemed impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. Robert's jaw tightened visibly. "They hurt our daughter," he stated flatly, anger simmering beneath his controlled expression. Clara nodded sadly, unable to defend what had happened under her own family's roof. "I'm so sorry. If I had known sooner," Marilyn interrupted gently. "You couldn't have known. When you did suspect something, you acted. That's what matters." The conversation shifted as Marilyn broached an unexpected topic. "Mrs. Granderson, we want Chloe to have extended family around her during recovery. We've discussed this and would like you to be her honorary grandmother. You saved her life, and we want her to know you." Clara blinked back tears, overwhelmed by this generous offer of connection rather than blame. I would be honored," she managed, voice thick with emotion. They watched the girls interact, noting how protective Lily seemed of the younger Chloe, showing her toys and speaking in gentle tones, unusual for a 5-year-old. Lily's experienced trauma too, Robert observed quietly. They might help each other heal. Clara nodded, hoping he was right. The road ahead would be difficult for both children. Therapy, possible court testimony, adapting to new family arrangements. But children possessed remarkable resilience when surrounded by love and stability. After the Vances departed, promising future visits, Clara sat with Lily on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The beauty seemed incongruous with recent events, yet somehow necessary, a reminder that light persisted even after darkest nights. Lily leaned against Clara's side, a small, warm presence that anchored her to the present moment. "Grandma, are you still sad?" the child asked unexpectedly. Clara considered the question carefully before answering. "Yes, sweetheart, I am sad about some things, but I'm also very happy you're here with me. And I'm happy Chloe is back with her family." Lily nodded sagely, as if this made perfect sense. "Sometimes people can be sad and happy at the same time," she observed with startling insight. "That's exactly right, my clever girl." They swung gently as evening settled around them, bringing cooler air and the first stars. Clara thought about the painful road that had brought them here and the uncertain path stretching ahead. Custody hearings, potential criminal trials, therapy sessions for Lily. So many challenges awaited. Yet in this moment, with Lily safe beside her and Chloe reunited with her family, Clara felt something she hadn't experienced since losing Alex. Hope. Not the desperate hope of denial, but the grounded hope that comes with surviving the worst and finding strength to continue forward. The neighborhood around them had changed too. People who had whispered behind Clara's back now greeted her with respect. Those who had dismissed her concerns now acknowledged her courage. It wasn't vindication she'd sought, but the recognition felt healing nonetheless. Later that evening, as Clara tucked Lily into bed, the child asked a question that caught her off guard. "Grandma, am I brave?" Clara smoothed Lily's hair gently, contemplating how to answer. She wanted to be honest while considering the burden Lily already carried. "Yes, my love, you are the bravest person I know. You saw something wrong and spoke up even though you were scared. That's what real courage means, doing what's right even when it's frightening." Lily seemed to absorb this. Her small brow furrowed in thought. Then she smiled, the first genuine smile Clara had seen in months, and hugged her grandmother tightly. "I love you, Grandma." Clara held her close, tears falling silently. "I love you too, Lily. More than all the stars in the sky." Outside their window, gentle breezes stirred the crepe myrtles, sending petals drifting to the ground beneath the full moon's silvery light. Clara closed her eyes, feeling an unexpected peace settle over her. She thought of Alex and imagined him smiling down from heaven, proud of his daughter and his mother, for finding truth and light within darkness. Clara held Lily until the child fell asleep, then carefully extracted herself and moved to the rocking chair. There was still so much uncertainty ahead. Legal battles, emotional recovery, rebuilding their small family in the aftermath of trauma and betrayal. But for this moment, watching her granddaughter sleep peacefully, Clara knew they had crossed the hardest part of the journey. Together, they would find their way through whatever challenges remained. Truth had finally conquered darkness. That knowledge, more than anything else, allowed Clara to close her eyes and find her own rest at last. The weeks following Chloe's rescue unfolded in a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and gradual healing. Clara established a new routine with Lily, centering their days around stability and gentle recovery. Mornings began with breakfast together, followed by school for Lily and various appointments for Clara, meetings with the family court lawyer sessions with Lily's child psychologist, and increasingly frequent visits with the Vance family. October brought changing leaves and cooling temperatures to their Atlanta suburb nature's transformation, mirroring their own gradual emergence from trauma's shadow. The preliminary hearing for Danielle's case revealed disturbing details about the New Light Society, led by Elias Thorne. Prosecutors described a cult that specifically targeted grieving mothers, promising spiritual connection with deceased loved ones while actually manipulating vulnerable women into participating in criminal activities. Clara attended each court date, sitting quietly in the back row, still struggling to reconcile the Danielle she had loved with the hollow-eyed defendant who barely acknowledged her presence. Ethan had been charged as an accessory, his angry outbursts now replaced with sullen silence as evidence mounted against both siblings. The district attorney had requested a meeting with Clara at her home, wanting Lily comfortable for this difficult conversation. Clara prepared tea and arranged cookies on her best serving plate in an attempt at normalcy amid circumstances that defied conventional hospitality. District Attorney Phillips arrived precisely on time, a tall woman with prematurely silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She accepted tea with the polite smile, making small talk until Lily became comfortable with her presence. The child sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring while half listening to the adults. "We'll need Lily's testimony," Mrs. Granderson, the DA, explained, keeping her voice low. "But we've developed methods to make it less traumatic. She can speak via closed-circuit television rather than facing her mother directly in the courtroom." Clara glanced at Lily, heart-aching at the thought of her granddaughter recounting her experiences for a jury. "Is it absolutely necessary? She's already told her story multiple times to police and psychologists." The DA's expression softened with genuine sympathy. The notebooks and physical evidence prove kidnapping and child endangerment. But without Lily's testimony about what she witnessed, we can't fully establish Danielle's knowledge and intent. Your granddaughter's words could mean the difference between a 5-year sentence and 20. Clara nodded reluctantly, understanding the legal necessity while dreading its emotional cost. The DA continued reviewing case details, mentioning that investigators had uncovered additional evidence linking Thorne's cult to 3 other missing children cases across Georgia. The prosecution team had begun piecing together how the cult had operated, discovering systematic targeting of women who had recently lost spouses or children. Thorne had an uncanny ability to identify vulnerability, the DA explained, rifling through her notes. He'd start with legitimate grief support groups, then select certain women for special attention. The organization offered a carefully crafted promise that certain gifted children could serve as conduits to the spirit world, allowing communication with deceased loved ones. Clara's mind flashed to Danielle in those early months after Alex's death. Hollow-eyed, desperate for connection, shutting herself in her room for hours. The perfect target for someone offering impossible hope. After the DA departed, Clara sat beside Lily, who had abandoned her coloring in favor of staring out the window. "Sweetheart, would you like to go for ice cream?" Lily turned, eyes brightening slightly at the suggestion. These small moments of childhood pleasure had become precious benchmarks of healing. Each genuine smile, each spontaneous laugh, a victory against darkness. They walked hand in hand to the neighborhood ice cream parlor, Lily choosing rainbow sherbet while Clara opted for vanilla. They sat on a bench under a maple tree ablaze with autumn color, enjoying their treats in companionable silence. A woman pushing a stroller slowed as she passed, recognition dawning on her face. "You're Clara Granderson, aren't you? I saw you on the news." Clara tensed, protective instincts flaring. Media coverage had been extensive, transforming their private trauma into public spectacle. She'd stopped answering her phone and had placed a "No Reporters" sign on her front lawn after finding journalists attempting to photograph Lily through windows. The woman must have noticed Clara's discomfort because she quickly added, "I just wanted to say you're an inspiration. My mother lives with me, and she's the one who noticed my daughter's developmental delays when everyone else missed the signs. I think older women see things the rest of us don't. We should listen more." She continued walking before Clara could respond, leaving her with unexpected tears stinging her eyes. Amid the intrusive attention had come these moments of connection. Strangers sharing stories of their own mothers and grandmothers of intuition dismissed, then vindicated of quiet courage that changed lives. That evening, Clara received a call from Commander Davis informing her that police had executed search warrants at 3 additional properties connected to the New Light Society. In one location, they had discovered extensive documentation revealing the cult's beliefs about special children who supposedly possessed abilities that would manifest through purification rituals, a sanitized term for systematic abuse. The investigation has expanded significantly, Mrs. Granderson. We now believe Thorne's organization has cells operating in multiple states. The FBI has joined the case. Clara listened with growing horror at the scope of the operation Danielle had joined. She glanced at Lily sleeping on the sofa, wondering how close they'd come to losing her to this madness. "Were there other children found?" she asked hesitantly. "No, thank God, but we did find lists of potential targets. Children the group had identified for future abduction. Your testimony about how you discovered Chloe has actually helped us develop new protocols for evaluating reports involving children's statements." After ending the call, Clara sat in the growing darkness processing these revelations. The idea that their personal tragedy had expanded into something that might prevent future abductions offered a small measure of meaning amid senselessness. FBI investigators uncovered journals and computer files detailing the cult's methodical approach to choosing victims. They specifically targeted single mothers or widows with children between ages 4 and 7, young enough to be manipulated, but old enough to follow instructions. Danielle had joined as a grieving widow seeking connection with Alex, but had gradually been trained to identify potential special children in her community. Chloe Vance had apparently been selected after Danielle observed her at a playground showing signs of what the cult called sensitivity, likely nothing more than a child's vivid imagination. The psychological profilers believed Danielle had been systematically broken down and rebuilt through classic cult indoctrination techniques: sleep deprivation, isolation from outside relationships, bombardment with confusing information, and alternating praise and criticism. This didn't excuse her actions, but helped explain how a loving mother could transform into someone capable of kidnapping and imprisonment. October gave way to November, bringing preparations for Lily's court appearance. Her therapist, Dr. Bennett, had been working with her for weeks, using play therapy and art to process her experiences and prepare her for testifying. Dr. Bennett pulled Clara aside after one session, voice pitched low to avoid Lily overhearing. "She's doing remarkably well considering everything she's experienced. Children are resilient, especially when they have consistent support. You're providing exactly what she needs, Clara." Clara watched Lily carefully arranging dolls in the therapy room's dollhouse, creating order in miniature, while her real world remained in flux. She still has nightmares. Sometimes she calls out for her mother, then seems confused when I come instead. Dr. Bennett nodded, unsurprised. "That's normal. She's grieving the mother she knew or thought she knew, the person who tucked her in at night, and the person who kept a child locked in the basement. In Lily's mind, these aren't the same person. She's trying to reconcile contradictory realities." Clara understood that struggle all too well. She too continued searching for the Danielle she had once loved within the stranger, who now sat emotionless through court proceedings. The day of Lily's testimony arrived with gray skies and a bone-chilling drizzle. Clara dressed her granddaughter in her favorite purple sweater and jeans, attempting to make this extraordinary day feel as ordinary as possible. They'd practiced what would happen, how Lily would sit in a special room with only the judge and lawyers present, while a camera transmitted her image to the courtroom. On the courthouse steps, Clara knelt to Lily's level, smoothing a stray hair from her forehead. "Remember what we talked about. Just tell the truth about what you saw and heard. That's all anyone wants from you. And I'll be waiting right outside the door the whole time." Lily nodded solemnly, clutching Barnaby against her chest. The judge had made a special exception, allowing the teddy bear's presence during testimony. Inside, they were escorted to a small room furnished with a child-sized table and comfortable chairs. The judge, a grandmotherly woman with kind eyes, introduced herself to Lily without her intimidating robes, explaining everything that would happen in simple terms. Clara kissed Lily's forehead before stepping outside, as required the hardest few steps she'd ever taken. Through the door, she heard the proceedings begin, Lily's small voice responding to gentle questions about what she had seen at home, what her mother had told her, what she had heard from the basement. Clara pressed her palm against the door, wishing she could absorb Lily's pain through the wood. The wait seemed endless, though her watch showed only 40 minutes had passed when the door finally opened. Lily emerged, clutching Barnaby eyes, red-rimmed but dry, her small shoulders squared with dignity beyond her years. "I did it, Grandma," she whispered as Clara enfolded her in an embrace. "I'm so proud of you, my brave girl." Later that afternoon, the prosecutor called with news Lily's testimony had been compelling and clear. Combined with the physical evidence in Chloe's own account, they now had an airtight case against Danielle. More significantly, Lily had provided details about conversations she'd overheard between her mother and other cult members that gave investigators new leads to pursue. The Vance family invited them for Thanksgiving dinner, a gesture of connection that touched Clara deeply. She prepared sweet potato casserole from her mother's recipe and helped Lily make handprint turkey decorations for each place setting. The Vance home bustled with extended family gathered to celebrate not only the holiday, but also Chloe's safe return. Clara watched Lily and Chloe playing with cousins, their laughter healing balm to her soul. These children who had encountered genuine monsters now chased each other through the house, playing ordinary games of tag and hide and seek. Marilyn found Clara in the kitchen helping with dishes after the feast. "Sometimes I still can't believe she's really home," Marilyn confessed, hands busy drying a serving platter. "I wake up in the night to check she's still in her bed." Clara nodded, understanding completely. "I do the same with Lily. I don't think that will stop anytime soon." Marilyn set down her dish towel, meeting Clara's eyes directly. "The therapist says Chloe might always have some effects from what happened. That's the hardest part, knowing they've stolen something from her that we can't give back." Moments like these had created a profound bond between the two grandmothers. Conversations that needed no softening or context, raw truths exchanged without judgment. Clara considered her response carefully. "My mother used to say that broken things when mended are often stronger at the damaged places. I believe that about our girls. They've seen darkness earlier than they should have, but they've also seen light triumph over that darkness. There's a kind of strength in that." Marilyn squeezed Clara's hand wordlessly, the simple gesture conveying shared understanding that transcended language. December brought Danielle's trial, a media sensation that attracted national coverage. The prosecution presented damning evidence, including the notebooks found in the basement security camera footage and testimony from former cult members who had escaped Thorne's influence. These witnesses provided crucial context about the organization's methods and beliefs, describing how new members were systematically isolated and indoctrinated. Clara testified about the changes she'd observed in her daughter-in-law after Alex's death, about Lily's frightened confession, about her futile attempts to get authorities to investigate initially. She spoke clearly and without embellishment, determined that her words served truth rather than vengeance. From the witness stand, she looked directly at Danielle for the first time in months. The young woman who had once laughed in her kitchen, who had loved her son who had given her Lily, sat hollow-eyed and expressionless. Yet as Clara described finding Chloe in the basement, she noticed something flicker across Danielle's face. A momentary crack in the emotionless facade, quickly suppressed but undeniably present. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Danielle would face sentencing after the new year, but with multiple felony convictions, she would likely spend decades behind bars. Clara felt no triumph at the verdict, only a profound sadness for all that had been lost. The holiday season brought fresh challenges as Lily experienced her first Christmas without either parent. Clara decorated the house with special care, incorporating Alex's childhood ornaments, alongside new ones she purchased with Lily. They baked cookies using Lily's handprints as reindeer and built a gingerbread house together, creating new traditions to layer over painful absences. Christmas Eve found them attending the community carol service, bundled against December's chill. Candles illuminated the small church as voices raised in ancient songs of hope born in darkness. Lily leaned against Clara's side, sleepy, but insisting on staying awake until the final silent night. In this moment of peace, surrounded by neighbors who had moved from judgment to support, Clara felt a quiet certainty that they would find their way forward. A fresh snowfall covered the ground Christmas morning, transforming their neighborhood into a glistening wonderland. Lily woke early, excitement temporarily overriding her usual morning solemnity. Clara had shopped carefully, choosing presents that would delight without overwhelming: a bicycle with training wheels, art supplies, books about brave girls, and a new dress for Barnaby that Lily had mentioned wanting. Clara's heart swelled, watching Lily's joy, savoring each smile as precious evidence of healing. When the presents were opened and breakfast consumed, they bundled up for a walk in the snow. Lily insisted on bringing her new instant camera, a gift from the Vances, to document their adventure. They built a snowman in the front yard using Clara's scarf and an old hat of Alex's to complete his attire. Lily photographed their creation solemnly, then asked a passing neighbor to take a picture of her and Clara together beside it. So we remember forever, Lily explained with unexpected poignancy. January brought Danielle's sentencing hearing. The judge considered victim impact statements, including a letter Robert Vance had written describing how Chloe still couldn't sleep without lights on how she'd lost weight. She couldn't afford to lose how her innocence had been stolen by calculated cruelty. Clara had struggled with whether to submit her own statement, uncertain what to say about the woman who had been both daughter and betrayer. In the end, she wrote about Lily, how a 5-year-old had carried an impossible burden torn between loyalty to her mother and the moral certainty that a child crying in a basement needed help. How Lily still asked when her mother would come home, still kept a photograph of Danielle hidden under her pillow, still lived in the complicated space between love and fear. The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to announce her decision. Clara sat with hands clasped tightly in her lap, oddly calm after months of emotional turbulence. Whatever sentence came would neither heal their wounds nor restore what had been lost, but it would provide closure to this chapter of their story. The sentence was severe, 40 years with possibility of parole after 25. The judge cited the calculated nature of the crimes, the involvement of vulnerable children, and the likelihood of additional victims had the cult continued operating. She addressed Danielle directly, noting that motherhood created sacred obligations that she had catastrophically betrayed. Clara met Danielle's eyes briefly as she was led away. For the first time, she thought she glimpsed something human breaking through the emptiness, a flash of anguish quickly suppressed. Clara would never know if it represented remorse or merely self-pity, but she chose to believe some fragment of the woman she had loved might still exist somewhere within that damaged soul. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered with microphones and cameras, hungry for reaction quotes. Clara walked past them silently, head held high. She had no interest in public statements or media attention. Her focus remained where it had always been, on Lily, on healing, on building whatever future remained possible from tragedy's aftermath. The family court granted Clara permanent custody of Lily in February, making official what Hart had already established, that Clara was now Lily's legal guardian and would raise her granddaughter as her own. The judge smiled as she signed the paperwork, noting that she rarely saw cases with such a clear solution. Clara and Lily celebrated with ice cream sundaes at their favorite parlor, a small ritual that had come to signify special occasions. Over rainbow sprinkle sundaes, Lily looked up suddenly with furrowed brow. "Grandma, what happened wasn't your fault." The unexpected statement caught Clara mid-bite. She set down her spoon, giving Lily her full attention. "What makes you say that, sweetheart?" Lily swirled her ice cream thoughtfully before answering. "Dr. Bennett says sometimes grown-ups feel guilty about bad things, even when they didn't do them. You look sad when you think I don't see. I think you feel like you should have known sooner about the girl in the basement." Clara blinked back tears, amazed by this child's perception. She had indeed carried that guilt, questioning every interaction with Danielle, wondering if she had missed signs, if she could have prevented Chloe's suffering by being more observant. "That's very wise of you, Lily. I do sometimes think that way." Lily nodded, satisfied with the confirmation. "But you're the one who believed me when I told. And you saved Chloe. Dr. Bennett says that's what matters most. What we do when we learn about bad things, not that we didn't know before." Out of the mouths of babes came wisdom Clara had been struggling to accept for months. She reached across the table, squeezing Lily's small hand. "You're absolutely right. Thank you for reminding me." Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and renewal. Lily had progressed to having only occasional nightmares, and her artwork now included sunny skies and flowers alongside the previously prevalent darkness. Her therapist had reduced their sessions to bi-weekly, noting significant improvement in emotional regulation and sense of security. Clara planted a vegetable garden with Lily's enthusiastic assistance, teaching her to identify seedlings and explaining how sunshine and rain work together to help things grow. There was healing in this connection to Earth's cycles, in witnessing how dormant seeds could emerge into new life given proper care and patience. The FBI investigation into the New Light Society expanded, with agents interviewing Clara several times about details she remembered from her interactions with Danielle. They had tracked Elias Thorne to a compound in rural Tennessee, where he had established a new base after abandoning Georgia. The raid on that facility rescued 2 more children and led to the arrest of 23 cult members across 5 states. Clara followed the news coverage with a mixture of horror and relief. Horror at the scope of what they'd uncovered, relief that the organization had been dismantled before claiming more victims. Commander Davis called periodically with updates, crediting Clara's persistence as the thread that had ultimately unraveled the entire operation. One quiet April afternoon, Clara received an unexpected letter with a prison postmark. Her hands trembled as she recognized Danielle's handwriting on the envelope. She set it aside until after Lily's bedtime, uncertain whether to open it at all. What could Danielle possibly say that would matter now? Curiosity eventually overcame hesitation. Clara sat in Alex's rocking chair, took a deep breath, and carefully opened the envelope. The letter began without greeting or preamble. "I've been in therapy here. They say I should take responsibility for my choices. I don't know if that's possible yet, but I'm trying to understand how everything went so wrong." Danielle described meeting Thorne at a grief support group 3 months after Alex's funeral. He had singled her out, offering private counseling sessions that gradually evolved into indoctrination. He'd convinced her that certain children possessed spiritual powers that could bridge the gap between living and dead, that through these special children she might communicate with Alex again. "I know how insane this sounds now," she wrote, "but when you're drowning in grief, impossible promises feel like oxygen." Clara read with growing comprehension of how vulnerability had been weaponized against a young widow desperate to reconnect with her husband. The explanation didn't excuse Danielle's actions, but provided context Clara had been missing: the how of her daughter-in-law's transformation from loving mother to cult member. The letter's final paragraph struck deepest. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that in my distorted thinking, I believed I was doing something sacred. I was wrong in ways I'm only beginning to understand. Please tell Lily that whatever she heard or saw, none of it was her fault. I failed as her mother, but she never failed as my daughter." Clara folded the letter carefully, returning it to its envelope. She would share selected parts with Dr. Bennett, and eventually, when appropriate, with Lily. For now, it provided a missing piece in their fractured family history. Not healing exactly, but perhaps a step toward understanding. Summer brought Lily's 6th birthday, celebrated with a party in Clara's backyard. Children from her class came bearing gifts and excitement, running through sprinklers and eating cake decorated with butterflies. Lily's newest fascination. Clara watched from the shade heart, full observing her granddaughter laughing uninhibitedly for the first time in over a year. Marilyn Vance stood beside her, their shoulders touching companionably. "Looking at them now, you'd never know what they've been through, would you?" Marilyn mused, watching Chloe and Lily leading a game of freeze tag. Clara smiled, noting how both girls had gained healthy weight, how their eyes shone with childhood's proper light. They carry it inside, but it doesn't define them. That's victory enough. That evening, after guests departed and birthday excitement subsided, Clara and Lily sat on the porch swing watching fireflies illuminate the gathering dusk. Lily leaned against Clara's side, content and drowsy after her celebration. "Today was the best day ever," she declared with childish certainty. Clara smiled, stroking Lily's hair gently. "I'm glad you enjoyed your party, sweetheart." Lily was quiet for a moment, watching a particularly bright firefly trace patterns in the darkening yard. "Grandma, do you think Daddy can see us from heaven?" The question emerged from seeming nowhere, though Clara had noticed Lily thinking about Alex more frequently as she processed her experiences in therapy. Dr. Bennett had explained this was normal. As Lily worked through losing her mother to imprisonment, she also revisited her earlier loss of her father. Clara chose her words carefully, honoring both truth and hope. "I believe he can. I think he watches over you every day, and that he's very proud of the brave, kind girl you're becoming." Lily absorbed this, then asked, "Does he know about Mom too?" Clara's heart contracted painfully. She pulled Lily closer against her side. "Yes, I believe he knows everything. And I think he understands in a way we can't yet, why people sometimes make terrible mistakes, and how love can exist even when people do wrong things." Lily nodded, accepting this complex idea with the peculiar wisdom trauma had forced upon her. "I'm glad we have each other, Grandma." The simple statement contained multitudes: acknowledgement of all they'd lost, gratitude for what remained, recognition of the bond that had carried them through darkness toward healing. Clara pressed a kiss to Lily's forehead, her throat tight with emotion. "So am I, my brave girl. So am I." As darkness settled fully around them, Clara helped Lily inside for bedtime routines: teeth brushing, story reading, prayers, and tucking in. These ordinary rituals had become sacred in their reliability, establishing the security Lily needed to heal. Before turning out the light, Clara paused in the doorway, watching her granddaughter's peaceful breathing. She returned to the porch alone, gazing up at the star-filled sky. The journey from that terrible morning revelation to this moment of ordinary tranquility stretched like a lifetime, though barely 18 months had passed. They had traversed territory no map could chart, guided only by love and an unwavering commitment to truth. Commander Davis had told her something during their last conversation that kept returning to her thoughts. Most people would have given up Mrs. Granderson. They would have accepted being labeled confused or senile or vindictive. But you trusted what your granddaughter told you against all opposition. That saved lives. Clara hadn't done anything extraordinary. She'd simply believed a child when that child needed to be believed. Yet that simple act of faith had rippled outward, saving Chloe, dismantling a dangerous cult preventing future abductions. The thought humbled her. A gentle breeze stirred the wind chimes, their melody like distant laughter. Clara rocked slowly, content in this moment of stillness after so much turbulence. The road ahead would have challenges, helping Lily navigate adolescence without a mother addressing questions about Danielle as they arose, continuing their mutual healing journey. But tonight, under stars that had witnessed humanity's struggles since time immemorial, Clara felt equal to whatever came next. She thought of Alex and imagined him smiling down proud of his daughter's courage and his mother's persistence. Truth had triumphed over darkness, not through dramatic heroics, but through the quiet stubbornness of an ordinary grandmother who refused to dismiss a child's whispered secret. Sometimes that was enough to change the world, or at least the small corner of it entrusted to your care. Clara closed her eyes, rocking gently in the peaceful night, grateful for second chances disguised as endings, for the unexpected gift of raising a child again in her twilight years, for the profound privilege of being Lily's safe harbor. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. Grandmother and granddaughter bound by love stronger than any darkness they had encountered.